Another feature added to ASP.NET MVC4 is the feature that allows you to override the user agent string that the runtime will use when figuring out what display mode to select. This is done through a number of extension methods for the HTTP context object, and you can set or clear a user agent string for a given user session. Why is this useful? Because you might have someone looking at your site with a mobile browser, but they really would like to see the desktop version of your site because maybe their tablet is large enough to work with the desktop site comfortably. In that scenario, you could provide a link or a button that says, view the desktop version of the site, and when the user clicks the link, you'll override their browser for the remainder of their session, and they'll be looking at the desktop version of the site instead of getting the .mobile views. And of course, it can work in the other direction too. A desktop user could click on a link that says view the mobile version, and you can set them up to view the mobile site instead of the desktop site. And of course, when I say site, that's from a user's perspective. It might look like two different sites, the mobile site and the desktop site, but behind the scenes it's all one MVC application, just with different views being rendered. Let me show you an example. Inside of our display modes view, I've added a bit more output. I have a div that will output the user agent header sent from the browser. This is the HTTP context.request.user agent value. And I'm also outputting the overridden user agent. And I can do that with the get overridden user agent extension method that's in the system.web.webpages namespace. If I look at this view in the browser now, then I'll see that the regular user agent and the overridden user agent are identical since I haven't done any overrides yet. And they're telling me that this is IE 10 running on Windows NT 6.2, which most of us would call Windows 8, or maybe Windows Server 2012, but this is Windows 8. And you can see I've also added some buttons to the view that will post back to override the browser. So over here in the view, here's the form set up with the buttons inside that will submit one of the values of empty, mobile, desktop, or silk, and one of these values will get posted back to the home controller when the user clicks on them. So in the home controller, I have a display modes action that will respond to an HTTP post request, as opposed to the display modes action that responds to a GET request. But the post request will take one of those values, and will have a crude but effective switch statement that switches on that incoming value and calls set overridden browser. Set overridden browser is an extension method for HTTP context, and that means in order to use it, you need to have a using for system.web.webpages. And there's two overloads of set overridden browser. There's one version that takes a browser override enum, so you can pass in browser override.mobile or browser override.desktop, and that's just a quick and easy way to set up either an Internet Explorer mobile user agent string for the browser or an Internet Explorer desktop version for the browser. That's what the .desktop would do. There's also a version of set overridden browser where you can pass in any user agent string that you want. So if the user requests that they want to see the Silk views, the views that are customized for Silk, then we'll set this up to have a user agent string just like the Kindle Fire, which has the word Silk in it. And notice there's also an extension method clear overridden browser. And when the user clicks on the default button, that will clear out any override that's currently in effect. Let's give this a try in IE, and I'll first point out that we are using the default display mode. So we are looking at a desktop view. But if I click the mobile button, now my user agent header stays the same, of course, but the overridden value changes to look like IE mobile. And this allows the mobile display mode to kick in. So if we did have a .mobile version of this view, the .mobile version would render. I can also click default, and that will clear out the override and give me back the IE10 user agent string. And now let's try Silk. Now I have an override that makes my browser appear as Silk, but notice the Silk display mode didn't activate. Why is that? Well, it just so happens to be the way that we implemented the context condition when we registered these display modes with the display mode provider. We're going to request.userAgent, which always gives back the true user agent header that the browser sent to the server. If I want to participate and play nicely with this override feature, then I should be using an extension method get overridden user agent here. Again, that's an extension method, so you'll need system.web.webpages here. And we'll do that for both when we're checking for the iPad and checking for Silk. Now I should be able to do a build. And let's come back to Internet Explorer, and I'll go to the default view. And we're back to IE10 using the default display mode, and I'll try the Silk view. And now Silk returns true. Just so happens I didn't have those buttons in the Silk view, so there's no way for me to get back. Ideally, I'd have those buttons registered in a partial that I could render from both the Silk view and the desktop view, and everything would work out nice. But I want to point out how this feature actually works with the browser. How does the application know on later requests from this browser that we're overriding the user's string? And we can find the answer if I go to the developer tools in Internet Explorer by pressing F12. And let's look under cache and look at view cookie information. And you can see this is the answer right here. The runtime will set a cookie with the name of ASPX browser override whenever you call that set overridden browser method. And that cookie will stick around for this user, so any subsequent requests that they make to the site, they'll still be in the mode that we set. So it doesn't matter how many times I refresh here, because that cookie keeps going back to the server. The runtime is seeing an override for the Silk user agent. If I clear the override, that cookie goes away and we'll be back to normal.